You were the chairperson of the SABC board around 2009 to 2013, is that correct?
2010, January to March 2013.
During that period, you're aware the public protector had conducted an investigation on certain happenings at the SABC. Is that correct?
Professor Ngubane, when you speak, you can put the mic on. He'll put his off. If they're both on at the same time, it interferes. So as you respond, you can press your mic, sir.
That's correct. But only the final report was released when I was no longer at SABC.
Your board was meant to serve a period of 5 years, is that correct?
Up to 2014, yes.
And that board did not finish its term. Can you shed light around the circumstances?
Well, first of all, I must remark, Chairperson, that I got your invitation to come here very late towards Christmas. I'd already made arrangements for my holiday. I then wrote you that it would be impossible to appear on the 10th of January because I'll just be returning from my holiday. I requested that I be given the 16th of January so that I can prepare myself adequately to appear before you. I was not given that, but given the 13th. So I've not had enough time to prepare for this. First of all, your letter...
Please, may you speak into the mic, sir?
Sorry?
Could you speak into the mic?
Your letter gave me the terms of reference of this inquiry. This inquiry was about the current SABC board to seek out its ability to take correct decisions and to lead the SABC. My board, the one I chaired, was never mentioned in those terms of reference. In fact, the terms of reference are even more confusing because you speak of previous boards and you don't specify the timing, the period. You speak of current board members, but there are no current board members because the board of SABC is not in existence. It's not there. So I have difficulty in contextualizing what your purpose is by calling me here. I came because I've served in this parliament for 10 years and I respect parliament. So I came here because the issues that were being discussed were of national importance. I want to make this clear. My head, so to say, was shaved in this house in my absence. You allowed people to comment on me without letting me know that I should be here or send my representative. So I have serious reservations and I reserve my right to take further action if your findings are adverse because I think that would be unfair. So you talked to me about why the board I chaired was dissolved prematurely. We had, obviously, like any other board, a lot of differences.
Just before you continue, Dr. Ngubane, the terms of reference of this ad hoc committee are very clear. They're very clear. And they have been adopted by the National Assembly. 400 members of the National Assembly. So they're very clear. We are very clear on what it is that we want to achieve. The second point, Dr. Ngubane, is whilst you might be correct that we were looking at the current board, but maybe we should remind you, sir, that in trying to correct the mistakes of the current board, there were certain matters that had started previous or prior to that board having been in place. So ours is trying to get a holistic picture of what is happening. It's really not about the individual, it's really trying to understand, because the ultimate goal is to try and find permanent solutions to our questions. And then the final point that I thought I should make, Professor Ngubane, is that when we took a decision to invite witnesses so that we could inquisitorially get to the bottom of it, it was not only limited to board members. Everybody that we thought would add value to our work have and were invited. So let's just clarify that it was never about the current board members. It was about everybody that we thought would assist Parliament in fixing up what it needs to do. And to the extent that the questions that are asked can be answered by you, we would request that you do so. Where you say it was outside of your term, that is also fine with us. We will take all those into consideration when we report. And our letter to you, dated the 15th of December, indicated clearly that we'd ask you about what transpired during your tenure. That was our letter to you. It said, please come and report on what transpired during your tenure. And that letter could be made available to you if needs be. So I don't want us to have a debate about where we're going to go and where we're not going to go. You have the right, as you indicate, that if you thought that what we asked you was unfair, you haven't prepared adequately for it, I think that the committee will consider that in our own recommendations, because we wouldn't expect you to understand, or not understand, but to remember everything. And also in terms of your appearance, we had drawn a program as a committee and agreed on the program. And our program was informed by the deadlines that Parliament had set for us. That you were on recess is something that we took into consideration. And thus we allowed you 3 extra days for further preparations. We could not move to the 16th without jeopardizing our own time frames as the committee. And I thought we had corresponded to your lawyers accordingly after they had sent a second or third letter saying, please give us from the 10th to the 13th, or extend it beyond the 10th. We tried to meet a middle ground. And I'm hoping that at least would have allowed you more time than would have been if the case was the 10th to do it. And I thought that was a fair compromise from both sides, that we afforded you that opportunity. I really do not want us to have a dialogue in terms of fairness or otherwise of the proceedings. If there is any dissatisfaction, Dr. Ngubane, you can always defer to the committee, and we will consider that in our report. But it has never been the case up to now. Not with any of the other witnesses who we also had to juggle around in terms of trying to find a time that was suitable to all of us. So I just want to reiterate, the letter indicated the 15th of December that you will be expected to respond to what transpired during your tenure. We did indeed receive your request for additional time because you had prior arrangements, and we did as best as we could in that regard. And finally, you've just sworn that you will answer all questions legally put to you, notwithstanding the reservations that you've had. That's what you swore to now, that you'll answer all questions legally put to you. So I'm appealing to all sides that we try and conduct and conclude this business as amicably as we possibly can, and everybody would reserve the right to respond to whatever the final outcome is. So that, I hope, Dr. Ngubane, then helps us address the question. I would have thought that these reservations would have been brought to the attention of the committee so that we could have discussed them at some point. But to bring them to the committee at this level is something that we can't not talk to as a committee. Because indeed you were given adequate time. You were given adequate time from the time that we wrote to you and agreed that it's the 10th, and we would have had behind-the-scenes engagement. So I don't want members to respond. I'm hoping, Dr. Ngubane, that you at least hear our side of the story and that we take this matter forward as we had agreed to, that there would be questions asked, that you would respond to those questions where possible. Members would engage with any further detail that they'd want to engage with, and we would take the proceedings forward. That's the plea from the chair, that's how we proceed with the matters. And indeed, you reserve the right, if you feel that you are not adequately prepared to answer a particular question, that you for the record, say that you're not adequately prepared, and we will deal with it in our final report. Can I afford you an opportunity, 5 minutes just to respond if you want to, and then we will go back to our proceedings.
With respect, Chairperson,
yes, sir.
You cannot compress 3 years' events into 3 days. You say I was given adequate time. It was totally inadequate. There are huge events that happened at SABC, right from the time of the interim board, we taking over, trying to resolve the issues. But not only that, the problems at SABC begin around 2007, 2008. The last profit report at SABC was in 2006. So it's a long story. It's a deep problem. Just with respect, I want to point that out.
Over to you, Advocate Vanara. You have got until 10:30. I'm sorry.
Respond.
Oh, yes, you may, sir.
All right. You are asking about why the board did not finish its term. There was the Auditor General report, which was ordered by the Portfolio Committee of Communications, that the AG does a full and complete study of events in terms of governance, financial management, compliance with legislation, all sorts of things that govern a good corporation, observing the PFMA, the Companies Act regulations, the Broadcasting Act. The AG did that. But not only that, the Special Investigation Unit also did its work. There were a lot of issues raised, but the issue that collapsed the board was the SIU report dealing with the public viewing areas that were put together for the 2010 World Cup. Now, this was during the tenure of the board I chaired. The SIU questioned the dereliction of fiduciary duty on the part of my board when it came to bidding, when it came to adjudication, when it came to finalizing the suppliers for the public viewing areas. They classified this expenditure as fruitless, wasteful, and irregular expenditure. And the SIU questioned whether, in fact, my board was not criminally responsible. But they put a qualifier. They said the extent of the negligence and responsibility will have to be examined further. Now, the lawyers said this report could not be handled or dealt with by the board. It was a matter for the minister because the board could not be a player and referee. Now the issue comes here. They convey this message through Claudia Motsoneng, who was the acting COO. The board members say they want the report. Claudia says, I can't give you the report because legal opinion says it must go to the minister. Then the fight started. And I said to my colleagues, surely, if the legal opinion is such that we must give it to the minister, they will have to do so. Well, many arguments went up and down. They convened a meeting here in Cape Town while I was engaged in Pretoria. They decided that they were going to demote Claudi from being acting COO back to being stakeholder manager, executive in the CEO's office. They came to me with a letter. I said, listen, this is in contravention of the Broadcasting Act. You cannot call a meeting, not invite the chairperson when he's in the country and available. And then you take a resolution and now I must execute it. I said, no. I said, in fact, I do not recognize the resolution or your meeting. Then I said, I'm leaving, because the board, to me, had become dysfunctional. So I resigned. That's the story of how that board collapsed.
Thanks, Doc. You correct, the Public Protector report was released after your board had ceased to exist. But knowing that the report dealt with the happenings during your tenure at the SABC, did you have sight of the report and did you read the report?
I had sight of the provisional report by the Public Protector. I wrote a long letter detailing my response on behalf of the board to the provisional report of the Public Protector. The Public Protector had dealt with Mosoneng falsifying his matric qualifications. It had dealt with irregular salary increments, and it also had dealt with the increases that he had given his staff. I pointed all this out. For instance, on the issue of matric, Claudi was appointed at SABC in 1995. Claudi had been a street kid, without parents, without a home in Kwakwa. He had managed to get sufficient help to go to school. He had reached the level of matric, but he couldn't finish that, so he kept studying on and off. However, because he was a street-smart person, he organized plays, particularly during the struggle period, sketches and everything in halls. He went to sports and reported and sent reports to the SABC about sporting events in the Free State. These reports were good enough to be used. Later, in 2003, I think, but it's somewhere there, Alvin Klopper, who was the head of provinces or regions, let's call it, because that was the definition at the time, realizing that the audience ratings at Radio Lesedi had started to rise from very low levels, which were then characterizing all our radio stations. Their audience ratings were very low, and therefore advertisers were not putting money into those stations. Realizing that the city was doing well, and checking why it was doing well, they found that it was because it was reporting relevant news, because Claudio was supplying information to news. And they concluded that they needed to take him on permanently. Alvin Kloppers put an affidavit to the Public Protector stating exactly why he employed Claudi Mosoneng when knowing, because Claudi told him when he said, I want you to come full-time to SABC, that he didn't have a matric. He states this in his affidavit to the Public Protector. The then head of station at the time, Claudi was at Lesedi, also put an affidavit to the Public Protector saying, the issue of matric never concerned us because we took this person because of the skills that he had shown, and we incorporated him into the SABC. Naturally, you would have expected this to influence the final report. It didn't. It was not even considered by the Public Protector, these two affidavits. I also stated that we came to SABC in 2010. Claudi had been at SABC from 1995. Previous boards, previous management had not seen this as a problem, that he didn't have matric. Even Professor Pippa Green said, who was head of radio at the time, they knew that Hlaudi didn't have a matric, but they needed his skills. There was a political dimension to this. There were many black people, black kids, whose life was impossible because of their family circumstances. The justification was, shall we leave all those people outside the system? As a result, there are many people employed full-time at SABC who do not have a matric, even today. All right? So he goes in and works in the news.
Sorry, Doc. With the greatest of respect, all I was just asking was whether you had sight of the final report of the public protector. And you see, due to time pressures, I would love to give you the whole day, but unfortunately, I only have 45 minutes. It will help that you answer to the question that I pose, so that we can finalize our session.
I did not have sight of the final report because I had left the SABC. But I do know that from Klopas, from Majavu, none of what I had said as a response to the provisional report was included in the final report.
There's evidence before this committee from Mr. Brian Molefe. You know the gentleman. At some point, he was the acting group CEO of your board. Is that correct?
Phil Molefe? Yes.
He's testified before the committee that Mr. Motsoeneng was the group executive, stakeholder relations, was sitting at board meetings at your invitation. What is your response to that?
Phil Molefe has said things under oath that are not true at all. He said, someone gave me a transcript of that we parachuted Hlaudi from Bloemfontein to SABC.
Okay, so sorry, Doc. As I said, you need to respond to the question I posed to you. And the question I asked you, is it true that you invited Mr. Motsoeneng, who was not an executive director, to sit at board meetings? Yes or no?
No. It's a no. The reason is simple. It was a board decision that Motsoeneng is not only a stakeholder relation person in the office of the GCO, but he was also a stakeholder relations person and spokesperson for the board. There's a written resolution of the board on this matter. We asked Phil Molefe to put this on the intranet, that the board had taken a decision that Hlaudi would become a stakeholder for the board. He sat in the board meetings, not as a participant, but as a listener to what the requirements of the turnaround strategies were. Because he had to communicate this to the unions, to the employees, and generally try and build trust between the board, between the employees, between the unions. That was the purpose.
So wasn't Mr. Motsoeneng reporting to the group CEO?
Mr. Motsoeneng was a stakeholder person in the group CEO's office, as well as to the board by board resolution.
Now, protocol and good governance practice would dictate, and in order not to interfere with the role of the group CEO, that the board maintains minimal contact with the other employees of the corporation, and that its link between the corporation and the board be the CEO. Isn't that the correct protocol?
We get people invited to board meetings. They also get invited to subcommittee meetings of the board. That does not amount to interfering either with the other group executives or with the GCO. Phil Molefe came to board meetings with Claudi. He was a friend of Claudi's. The only problem, later on, they quarreled for some personality differences and so on. But the issue of Claudi, Molefe, the board members, never arose because the duties were very clear.
There's evidence before the committee that Mr. Mutswaneng, or whoever, prepared a memorandum for a salary hike of 500,000, and you called Mr. Molefe into an office to persuade him to approve the salary or the bonus of 500,000, correct?
No, not correct. There was never a bonus of 500,000 for Claudi. I, as chairperson, do not originate salary increases or any financial matters. That comes from the relevant stakeholders in the SABC, in this case, Human Resources, the Finance Department. What Phil said was simply trying to damage my name here. He said, he spoke of me threatening him or Claudia. I mean, there never such a meeting. Could you please ask him to produce that letter or that document that he was supposed to? The only document that I've got in my presentation is one of a formal proposal to adjust Mutswaneng's salary to the level of the other group executives because he had come in on a very low base. That was proposed by the head of Human Resources, signed off by Lulama, who was then the CEO, and I approved it as chairperson because it was not the general salary increase, it was an adjustment.
Who appointed Mr. Mutswaneng as acting COO?
It was the board of the SABC.
Will there be a resolution of the board to that effect?
Yes, it's supposed to be, but it's part of the problem I have. I've not been able to collect all those documents.
I just want to read from the Public Protector's report what her findings were about Mr. Mutswaneng's appointment as acting COO. He says the allegation that the appointment of Mr. Mutswaneng as acting COO was irregular is substantiated. By allowing Mr. Mutswaneng to act without requisite qualifications and for a period in excess of 3 months without the requisite board resolution and exceeding the capped salary allowance, the SABC board acted in violation of the SABC's 19.2 Articles of Association, which deals with appointments, SABC policy number HR 002/98/A, acting in higher scale, and Chapter 5 of the Broadcasting Act, which regulates acting appointments, and this constitute improper conduct and maladministration.
Not correct.
Now, I've not posed the question.
Oh.
This report of the Public Protector has not been set aside by any court of law. You agree?
Well, it came after I left the SABC, so I'm not sure whether they've applied for a review or whatever. But I'm just saying, promotion, not even promotion, appointment to a senior acting position depends on your scale code. If your scale code is equivalent to what the actual acting permanent person, like say in this case the COO, if your scale code is equivalent to that, being a group executive, you can be designated as acting in that position. It does not require academic qualifications. It's a matter of the level at which you are.
The question that I posed, Doc, it will help, but with the greatest of respect, that you understand the question and try to respond to the question. The question that I've asked is it correct that this entire report has not been set aside by a court of law? If you don't know, it's fine, you don't know.
I was no longer there when the final report came, so I do not know what actions have been taken or are in the pipeline.
See, what worries me, Doc, is you keep on raising this answer that subsequent to your departure at the SABC, you didn't follow the developments around this particular report. Why? Is it because you didn't care?
When I left the SABC, it would have meant they sent me the report. I was engaged. Let me just give you, unfortunately, you want very simple questions to complex questions. I was appointed to be chairman of the Land Bank and chairman of the SABC simultaneously. When I ceased my work at SABC, I concentrated fully on my work at Land Bank. I did not visit SABC head offices at any stage after I left. So when I tell you that I did not have sight of the final report, that's true.
No, I'm not disputing that you did not have sight, but I want to put it to you, and this I'm not asking you, I'm telling you, that the reason you did not care about that report, you didn't bother to read the report, is because you didn't care about the damage you've caused the SABC. What is your response to that?
I did not cause damage at SABC. I saved the SABC. It was bankrupt when we came. The regulations were not observed. Even the financial statements for the public service broadcaster and the public commercial broadcaster were not finalized. It was in a mess. We sat around trying to stop the hemorrhaging of money out of the SABC. There was huge theft going on. The AG found that if you read the AG's report. So don't accuse me falsely of destroying the SABC.
This is 10.1.2 of the Public Protector's report, and this speaks specifically to you, sir. It says the former board chairperson, Dr. Ben Ngubane, further acted irregularly when he ordered that the qualification requirements for the appointment to the position of COO be altered to remove academic qualifications as previously advertised, which was clearly aimed at tailor-making the advert to suit Mr. Mtsoneng's circumstances. She says this constitutes improper conduct, maladministration, and abuse or unjustifiable exercise of power. That is what she's saying.
Could you produce that advert? Because there was no such advert that I altered. Please produce it for me.
Okay. I have not asked you a question as yet.
Yes.
I've just read you what the public protector, in her report, which affected you, which you had no interest in reading, despite seeing a provisional report. So I was just reading to you. I'm still to ask you a question, sir.
I wish the public protector has included that advert. Because you see, when someone comes to the public protector and says, Ngubane changed such an advert in order to... Mtsoneng's appointment as COO never featured in my time. The only thing that featured was the appointment as acting COO, which required no advertisement. So I would wish to see the advert, because no advert ever came out on Motsweneng's promotion or filling the COO position in my time.
Okay. Doc, unfortunately, it is not. You see, it would have been nicer, it would have served you well, had you read that public protector's report and disagreed with it in the manner in which you're disagreeing with now, and taken it on review and have had it set aside. Now, because you did not read the final report, because of that, you did not see what was in the report, you deprived yourself of an opportunity to raise issues that you're raising now. Now, unfortunately, this committee is not going to entertain that, because in law, the report of the public protector, rightly or wrongly, whatever it says, it has not been set aside. So we take these issues as they stand because they have never been challenged. What is your comment to that?
Whatever the public protector said was said in the context of my work at SABC. I wasn't going to be able to foot the bill for a review process on my own. It was obviously the corporation's business to take that report on review. So to accuse me of having failed to do so is unfair.
Further, this is what the public protector says. In view of your salary increases between yourself, Ms. Mokhobo, and whatever the HR report was saying, the allegation that Mr. Motsweneng's salary progression was irregular is also substantiated in that Mr. Motsweneng received salary appraisals 3 times in 1 year, as hiking his salary as Group Executive Manager Stakeholder Relations from 1.5 million rands to 2.4 million rands. His salary progression as the Acting Chief Operations Officer concomitantly rose irregularly from 122,961 rands to 211,172, which was a 63% increase in 12 months. And this was in violation of Part 4 of SABC Personnel Regulations and SABC Policy HR 002/98/A, acting in higher scale, and this constitute improper conduct and maladministration. Now, this is what the public protector says about you. Now, subsequent to this report, this damning report, at least you will agree with me, whether it is true or false, but accepting that this report is there, it has not been set aside. It is damning on you, both personally and as chairperson of the board at the time. Is that correct?
It is not correct.
So is this report praising you? What I've read now are these praises. Yes,
this report is created out of statements that I was not asked to corroborate. Now, if someone gives information and the person being accused is not given a chance to respond to that, let me put it to you. The SAP salaries are normally very high. There were a series of adjustments to salaries, but all within the parameters of salaries at SABC. Itani received a salary progression. He was the highest paid at SABC. So to address this issue, you would have to take the whole HR documentation and recommendations about everybody who received salary progressions at SABC. Why pick just on one case?
Okay.
Before you intervene, let's just get clarity on this one, Dr. Ngubane. And you can continue. I think the question that we should be asking is, are you aware that there was a salary increase of 63%? That's the first question. And secondly, as the accounting officer at the time, the buck stops with you. Do you think that 63% increase in 1 year is something normal? And I think your questions need to be as specific as that, because you were the accounting officer. Somebody gets a 63% increase, regardless of what it is. As the accounting officer, is 63% salary increase something that sat comfortably with you? Not you as Mr. Ngubane, but as the board, because all of you were the accounting officers. Just a sense from you.
Let's put it this way. SABC is audited by independent auditors. And the AG also came into the picture in the audit of SABC. None of the audit findings point to that as irregular and improper, wasteful, fruitless expenditure. Now comes a report from the site which raises an issue that we have considered to be a normal part of the process. Saudi came in from the provinces at a very low salary. He gets given positions that make him reach the group executive level. And the disparity is huge when you consider what people get in the regional offices and headquarters once they become group executive chiefs. So if you work in that environment, a salary increase of 63%, considering where the person comes from, what stages you are putting him through, is not abnormal. And Claudi came into that situation because of the failing of the very group executives who were earning huge salaries, and therefore the disparities had to be corrected.
Back to my question, Doc. The report of the public protector, particularly the relevant provisions I've just read to you, were they singing praises for you personally and for the board that you're heading? Or was it an indictment on you and your board? Yes or no?
No, it cannot be that simple. I told you, with respect, let's not make this something of a very awkward situation. There were complex issues involved. So you can't say just yes or no. As I tell you, this committee will have to go to SABC and look through the recordings of the meetings, through all the documents, minutes, resolutions, before you can actually come back and judge us. The public protector never did that. So if she chooses to condemn me, it's a choice. But I'm telling you, I will not accept that as condemnatory or praiseworthy because it's not informed by fact.
You see, ordinarily I would have loved to entertain and believe you, Doc. But the problem is you never challenged the report, and the report stands. And I've been asking all of these questions because I want to ask you, you know about consequence management.
Of course I do. But, as I say, there was a new board at SABC. They took over where we left off. They probably have launched, in fact, I think they did launch a request for a review of that report. I would have to verify that, but I was not involved in that because I couldn't do that review on a personal level. It's just impossible.
Why would you not have reviewed it in your personal capacity when some of the findings are damning in your personal capacity?
How many millions would that cost? Who would pay for that?
So there's this public protector report speaks very badly about you, both in your personal capacity and in your capacity as a leader of the board. Nothing happens to you, you get to be appointed, you're now the chairperson of ESCOM, is that correct? ESCOM board.
Now, please, let's just understand each other. I would love to have reviewed this report, sure. But I had submitted my response to the Public Protector's provisional response. The fact that she chose not to take that into account, well, I mean, I was disempowered. If you had said to me, Chairman, I reject your response to my provisional report, give me greater clarity and so on, that would have been a different matter.
In view of this report, that does not talk good about yourself, personally and in your leadership qualities. Is there any reason why this collective, this committee, should not recommend to the National Assembly for you to be removed as the board of ESCOM for the reasons specified in this Public Protector's report? Is there any reason you could advance?
There are courts in this country. I will challenge that action with all my might, and I'm sure the decent citizens of this country will contribute to my fund to challenge that, because it is not based on fact. It is based on someone's conclusions without taking the necessary trouble to find the truth.
So for you to be removed in your current position, you will find money to fight that cause. And you didn't have to go find money to fight this report that is damning on you.
I've told you, there was a board that succeeded our board. It was up to them to take this on review. It was not for individual board members who had left office. So you are asking me an impossible question to get to a wrong conclusion. You want to remove me from ESCOM? Do so. Do so. I'm there to serve this country. I've served this country from 1994, in different categories. I served well at Land Bank because the circumstances were different. There was a CEO there who knew the duties of a CEO, who knew financial control, who knew good governance. We come to, at the same time at the SABC, the CEOs were very weak. The internal control systems were very weak. Financial controls were very weak. It was a very complex environment. So I wasn't going to go and raise money on a matter that the board at SABC should have taken up. And I have asked, before I came here, asked one official, as far as the official is concerned, there is an application in the South Gauteng Court, High Court, to review the Public Protector report.
Just to correct you, so the application to review is not a court order to set aside the application. Thanks, Chair. Mr. Msulwa Daka, whom you had recommended as the CFO of the SABC at the time, why was he not eventually appointed to that position? Instead, Ms. Duda was appointed.
Minister Patayachi, who is late, rejected the appointment of the CEO that we had decided on for SABC. Mr. Taumore had been an excellent candidate. We had written to the minister to say we want to appoint Taumore. That's what we have decided. Mr. Patayachi called a special AGM and changed the articles of association, that he will take recommendations from the board, but he will appoint. That's how Mr. Taumore was sidelined from becoming the CEO of SABC. Now, unfortunately, Minister Padayachi passed away. We had to restart the whole process of appointing a new CEO under Minister Dainapule. Dainapule said, give me names that you think are appointable. We had panels, we did that. She appointed Lula Mamokobo, not Phil, and somebody else who was there. Comes the CFO position. We conduct interviews, set up panels. 3 names are sent there, including Mr. Tata. The minister says, no. Who did you interview? We give the whole list. Says, no, but as far as I know, there are complaints that some of the people were left out, who were shortlisted. So HR says the only name they have who they think must have been a mistake to leave out is Gugu Duda. So we again constitute the panel. We say, okay, we'll give her a chance. We interview her. We send it in addition to the 3 names that we have given. The minister appoints Duda. Now, what we didn't know at the time was that Lulama and Duda were related to the minister. They were relatives. So the sidelining of our recommendation follows the new articles of association that enable the minister to be the one who decides on these 3 important positions, CEO, CFO, and COO.
The last question from myself relates to the TNA breakfast show. There were discussions that started during your tenure. Were you aware of those discussions?
The breakfast shows, first of all, Phil hosted 16 breakfast shows, the one you are talking about, without the approval of the board. He ordered 800 copies of New Age every day to come to the SABC. That was not a board decision. Ultimately, we called him in, and he gave a business case why these breakfast shows were important. First of all, the SABC was using his staff, was using his production equipment. The advertisements would come in during the shows, and that was good revenue for SABC. For instance, per 30 minutes, the lowest cost or price of a 30 minutes advertisement is 90,000 rand. A bigger show like Generations is 110,000 rand per half a minute. Now, when you look at how many breaks come in on these breakfast shows, you can see the revenues that SABC gets. So there was a business case. We said, all right, let them go on. But we didn't initiate that. Phil Molife initiated it.
No further questions, Sean.
Thank you very much.